Good evening and welcome back to 31 Horror Nights. It's October 28th and tonight's movie is Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. This is a black comedy slash horror comedy from 2022 that takes the classic trope of a group of people in this isolated mansion are together and there's a murder and they're trying to find out who it is, except through the lens of Gen Z. Also, Pete Davidson is in this movie. I recognized him during the trailer. This movie was directed by Helena Regin, who is a Dutch actress who actually has quite a lot of credits under her belt. There are also female writers for the story and the screenplay. I looked and noticed that the composer is Disaster Piece. He did do the composition for It Follows, but I mostly know him for the music from Fez and Hyper Light Drifter, which are these pixel art games. That music was very atmospheric, very vibey and spacey. Don't really know how well that works for a murder mystery though. Apparently, these group of rich 20-somethings are in this mansion in the middle of nowhere during a hurricane, and they play a party game called Bodies, 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 where one person pretends to be a murderer, and then actual murders take place. I assume there's going to be a decent amount of mystery in this movie. I want to see if I can guess who the killer is. I have seen a couple really good dark comedies in Horror Nights, like The Menu or Ready or Not. Maybe this will be that good. Who knows? Let me go check it out. Overall, I thought that was really good. I'm gonna give Bodies, Bodies, Bodies a 9 out of 10. A lot of people have interpreted this movie as a satirization of Gen Z culture as a whole, and I can absolutely see that. There are elements of that in this movie. But I almost feel like this is more of a satirization of what friendships have become in the modern era. Because probably the biggest source of conflict in this movie, aside from the dead people, is just how quickly the relationship between these five young women disintegrates over the course of this night. They turn on each other, they blindly accuse each other, they accuse everyone else of being fake, and to an extent, everyone kind of is fake in some way. But I remember towards the end of the movie, there is this really, really long scene where the characters are arguing, and it gets really heated and really vicious. And eventually I was thinking, this stopped being about the murders 10 minutes ago. And from what I understand, barring one girl, the other four have known each other for years. This is the type of suspicion and backstabbing you would expect from a group of strangers, not a group of close friends. And I don't even think it's because they're bad people. I just think it's that they haven't really put in the work necessary to make a strong friendship. And that comes through during this time of crisis. But that being said, there is absolutely satire and parody of Gen Z culture here. The way that they use therapy speak, for example, using words like gaslight and toxic. And also the way that they inject identity politics in situations where it does not need to exist. Which is most situations, if we're being honest. But seriously, time and place, and it is not here. I remember seeing this social media thread arguing the fact that Lord of the Flies would not have turned out the way it did if it was a group of girls who crash landed on that island. They wouldn't have devolved into violence so quickly. Movies like this show that that's probably not true. We got quite the colorful cast of characters. We got the 5 main girls and 2 men. The girls are all Zoomer 20s, and you got Pete Davidson, who's a little bit older than that, and this one other guy who is much older than that, who is actually dating one of the girls, which they acknowledge as sus in the movie, but nothing ever really comes of that. I think out of the 5 main characters, my favorite was the lead, Sophie. If anyone in this group served as the relatable everyman, it would probably be her. And I just looked up her actress, Amanda Stenberg, and she was Rue from The Hunger Games. At no point did I make that connection in this movie. I never would have guessed that. But yeah, the acting all around is great in this movie. It's a really good cast of characters. I was expecting the murder mystery aspect to play a lot larger of a role, and it really didn't. It kind of took a back seat for the, interpersonal struggles of this friend group. And while the big reveal at the end of the movie I was kind of on the fence about, is this clever or is this dumb, I think I'm ultimately going to settle on me liking it. Because I don't think any other ending would have fit this movie's overall message better. I'm being deliberately vague because I do recommend watching this movie yourself. But if you've already seen it or you don't care about spoilers, I'm going to start going into spoilers now. The first body in this movie is that of Pete Davidson's character, David. David was a huge jerk in this movie. Like, he was annoying, he was self-obsessed, he was rude to everybody. So that really didn't help narrow down a culprit, because I think most of these characters could have a reason why they would want him dead. And at this point of the night, the power is out, there is no reception, there is no Wi-Fi, and Sophie's date that she brought along, the one, like, outsider in this friend group named B, accidentally drained the battery of the car, the only car they could use, by leaving one of the lights on. So that means they're gonna kind of have to deal with this themselves, and they are so not equipped to do that. The next death we actually see happen, it's Greg, that older man who's dating one of the girls. B kills him by bludgeoning him to death, but in the context of that situation, there is reasonable doubt that it was just self-defense or panic. Most of the people in the room at the time had weapons and they were waving them around, including Greg. So that one seems to be kind of open and shut, but then you find one of the girls dead at the bottom of the stairs. It was Emma who was dating David, and that's when things start falling apart. They do kind of turn on B, as she was an outsider and she did kill Greg in front of them, but that gets dropped fairly quickly. Instead, it's the three people who were supposedly close friends, Sophie, Alice, and Jordan. They turn on each other, and it gets nasty. The exact dynamics of who is mad at who does change a lot throughout this argument, but by the end of it, most of the anger is being directed towards Jordan. The problem is that Jordan is the only one that has a gun. And just from like a screenwriting and direction standpoint, the pacing of this sequence, this argument, and the ensuing physical struggle that follows it was a masterclass in escalation. By the end of it, both Jordan and Alice are dead, but they're both similar to Greg's death, where they could be reasonably attributed to an accident. This just leaves the two people we've been following the closest throughout this movie, Sophie and B. And no more murders happen until morning, like the hurricane's over, the sun is up. And that's when we get the final big twist of the movie. After revealing that Sophie knows how Emma died, Emma fell down some stairs, but she decided not to tell anybody because she knew nobody would believe her. So that just leaves us with one final question. Who killed David and set all of this into motion? And the answer they finally get is nobody killed David. It was an accident. There's a point at the beginning of the movie where Greg used, I thought it was a machete, apparently it's a different type of knife or sword, to open a bottle of champagne. And all the other girls are so impressed by it, and David is kind of huffy about it. You can tell he's jealous of Greg, even though I really don't understand where that would come from. But at the point in the night where the power went out, he was trying to film a TikTok where he did the exact same thing, trying to open a bottle of champagne with that blade, and somehow manages to mess it up so much that he accidentally slashes himself in the throat and bleeds out. So there was no murderer after all. By the end of the night, every single death except for that one can be attributed to their panic and distrust of one another. And in a way, that's even darker than if one of them was a cold-blooded killer. Bodies, Bodies, Bodies is an interesting case because it presents itself as this murder mystery dark comedy, but doesn't work as well as it does because it has a particularly good mystery, or it's particularly scary, or even really being that funny. It works so well because of how real it feels at times. It does kind of serve as a satirization of Gen Z, and it does kind of have the jokes of they're always glued to their phones, or they don't really know how to navigate the real world. But that comes from less of a place of like spite and derision and more of like concern, which in a way is almost worse. It really was a unique movie. I can't think of anything that this reminded me of. I would say check it out. All right, thank you for listening. I'll see you tomorrow.